Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast, Superpower and Sidekick. I'm Kim Ang.
And I'm Cindy Kay, and we meet up every week to connect with spirit, superpower, to live a life beyond our imagination.
Yes, indeed. What's our topic for the day?
Our topic for the day is following your spirit, and how if you don't follow your spirit and you don't listen to it, you basically end up feeling like you're in a hole and all stuck. But then if you do finally get over the hump and start being able to overcome our conditioning to follow the spirit, how synchronicities start lining up all on their own. And how it happens just by us making a choice, so to speak.
Yeah, I do find that when you want to do something and once you make a choice, once you make the decision to go forward, it seems like things do fall into place. But you have to pay attention to the signs, right?
You have to pay attention to the signs and those subtle little clairs, the cognizant, clairaudient, clairsentient, those kind of things. And most often it comes through claircognizant, which generally, because of conditioning, leads us straight into dichotomy. And we start arguing with our higher self and our soul's knowing, because the physical is in the body, and the perspective from the physical is this doesn't line up with either my bank account or my life situation right now, or who's going to watch the dogs. It can be literally as simple as that. And you tell your spirit no before it even gives the chance to tell you what it would like for you to do. And I would say, being able to follow a calling takes courage, and it is not easy to overcome conditioning or our family and peer pressure to stay small. Because it's not just generally ourselves we end up in argument with when we decide to take this leap of faith and do whatever it is our spirit is prompting us to do. Once we get past our own dichotomy and start moving forward, then generally the family will come in and say, oh, no, 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 you can't do that. That's out of the ordinary. That's scary to me, so don't you dare do that. And so not only do we have to face our own conditioning, but we have to face the conditioning of the people around us as well, just to be able to step out on a limb and do what spirit is prompting us to do. Because almost always it is something that is out of our realm. How else is spirit going to guide us to overcome our own conditioning? And that is the actual goal in the first place.
Yeah, overcoming the conditioning and also overcoming ourselves and we tend to stop ourselves
That's what I
from.
mean by conditioning, that we are conditioned to stop ourselves. That is not natural. You get a 3-year-old and they have a cool, inspired idea and they just go do it. They don't argue with themselves. It is conditioned into us.
So how can we get ourselves out of that state?
It's by following those little prompts. Sometimes they're big promptings, but those subtle promptings that our inclination is to argue with them and to apply resistance. That's the ones that we need to really seat ourselves in, marinate, and go, hey, this is my passion. One of the things that I realized when I first started following my calling was that I felt guilt and shame for following something I wanted to do, just for the plain fact I wanted to do it. And that's definitely conditioning. So, of course, we have been kind of trained to think that our life's passion and our life's mission is going to go against what we want or don't want. And in actuality, our passions and what we feel passion, attraction, and, what we are drawn to is our life quest. That is our soul mission. But we've been kind of trained out of it and to feel guilty that if we get to do something we want to do, that it's not free, that we have to pay some kind of emotional toll in order to do that. I'm thinking of, traveling in specific because right now I just booked a ticket to Peru this morning or the retreat part for a trip for my husband and I. And we haven't been on an international trip for about 9 years, but we've already broke all the norms. And so have you, at least for the United States. I've been on over 65 international trips. My husband's been on probably 30 to 40 of them, which is, both of us, is way more than most people in the US have stepped off of this continent. And whenever I first started traveling, I cannot tell you how many people came and arguing with me about how I should not travel and that that was not in my best interest.
So that reminds me of what you said before in the past podcast about like when you're wanting to do something, you have to kind of feel that and say, does this make me feel good? Does this make me feel happy? And weigh your emotions. And if someone is trying to stop you from doing something, how does that process make you feel? Do you feel guilt? Do you feel shame?
Okay?
Then you proceed with whichever is giving you the better feeling, right?
Right. What if we can get over the fact of having guilt for doing what we want to do? And that's sometimes the biggest trick, is that we are allowed to fulfill our passions, but we have been trained and conditioned to not even step foot outside of ourselves to do that. And that when we do it, we should feel ashamed and guilty because we're doing something really cool. Um, I'm trying to think of a good example and it's not coming to me, so we'll just talk about it some more, but I'm sure something will come up. But, you know, for synchronicity to work, and what I'm specifically talking, not just getting out and traveling, I'm talking about doing spiritual traveling, about, following your own path that your spirit is prompting. So, say that we have this physical body, but there is another aspect of us, another mind that we connect to that is ours, but it's in our higher self, in our energetic soul self. And so it has a different perspective than what our physical components have. And that energetic component can start feeding us ideas and inspirations. But if it doesn't line up with our worldview, a lot of times it won't get past that for us to take the first step. But if we do reply to our messages and to our guidance from our higher self to start following these promptings, we get more of these guided moments, and the organized, synchronistic knowledge can come in and start making it happen for you. I mean, so often, I know somebody who would really love to move to the little town that I'm in, but she's got all of her only if this happens, only if that happens, only if that happens, and only if that happens. She feels it to every bit of her being to be here, but she has argued herself out of it because she wants A, B, C, and D to happen before she does it. Unfortunately, that's backwards to how spirit works. If we step out and say, okay, I'm being prompted to do this, I'm not going to worry about A, B, and C, because if spirit's prompting me to do it, then all of that's going to start lining up and it's going to work out. So I'm going to make my first step and I'm going to take action, because action is what is the appropriate reply to spirit prompting. And as much as we think and speak, it cannot actually put that synchronicity into effect and into motion until we take action towards the prompting.
Okay, so how is that different than, say, you want like a certain job and there are certain criterias that you will and will not work under, or a relationship that you're seeking? So how is that different than just saying, well, this is not what I this is something that I would not want. These are the conditions. So isn't that the same thing as what your friend was doing? Like, if only if this.
Yes and no, because it's actually just like fear based worries, and it's no, it's different.
Okay.
And also, good luck setting boundaries with spirit. It's just a whole different concept. Because your higher self pretty well thinks it has a right to you.
Okay, so like for example, when I got my dream job, 17 years ago, I was working for an attorney and was not happy. So then I said, "Okay, I'm done with this. In my next job, you know, these are the conditions. I want to be paid well. I want a certain freedom. I don't want to be micromanaged. Blah blah blah."
Okay, that is manifestation with your orders, and that's actually the way to do it. So often our fears will stop in front of it and go, "Oh, but I'm not worthy of asking for those things." No, that is a negotiation. That's different than what I'm talking about, because we're allowed to negotiate all of our experiences, and what you're actually speaking about is aligning our actions with our values and integrity. And I think we should do that with every single choice that we make. That if it does not own up to our own self worth, our integrity, and our values, we should not move forward with it. So, we shouldn't be working in an organization that maybe we're against what they do. That's going to put conflict, and you're not going to have harmony in your life, and you're not going to feel fulfilled. And that's really what I'm trying to talk about here, is fulfillment of our soul's wishes and wants, because otherwise we walk around like an empty hole and can be energy vampire to everybody on the planet. So how do we find our own fulfillment so that way we don't do that? And um, I think that what you're talking about is actual steps to making the best decisions for ourselves. So, you know, what I'm talking about, okay, I was prompted for a long time to move to St. Louis from New Mexico. It took me over 5 years longer from the time I got the prompt till I actually did it. And it was all this list of little things that when I actually finally had it and I took that first step to move forward, all of those things I had been so worried about synchronistically took care of themselves almost immediately after, because I took the first step. So what I'm talking about, I think, is a little bit different dynamic or maybe in the order that it happens, not so much, because I do think that we need to put forward, hey, I need this, A, B, and C. There is that. But when I was so worried about making a step that they wanted me to do, that I was frozen and didn't make any step. You see what I'm saying? The difference?
Yeah, kind of. So one is more fear-based, where you don't want to take the first step because of fear, whereas the other one is you're kind of manifesting what you want into your life.
It's a different perspective. You're in one hand, you're calling in, hey, I've already learned from experience. If I do A, B, and C, then I'm not living up to my own self-value and my worth and my values. And I definitely want to live my life in integrity. So that's one step. But to not even make a first step towards your passion due to fear and what ifs, that's a whole nother ball of wax.
Yeah, that's what's stopping you from your dream.
And the thing is because a lot of us, what we're seeking is to have more synchronicity in our life, right? But
Hmm.
synchronicity is tied into taking actions on spirit's promptings. Both of these things are really negotiating with ourselves, our own self worth and self values, and where our integrity lies. And sometimes we don't know those things until we bump up against something that is the opposite of what our passion is and what feels resonant to our being. So often we don't even know what we like or don't like. Again, in a conditioned world, we've been told what to like and what not to like, and all of
Hmm.
it's propaganda. So we kind of have to set out on a path to find out what's important to our own being. And that can be a whole path in and of itself. Let's see, Celestine Prophecy. There's a book and a movie, and they actually talk about that you'll get a little glimmer of what you need to do next. And then if you follow that, then you get the next. It is very working with spirit, is very much so like working with a scavenger hunt, and you don't get the next clue until you do the first clue. And a lot of people, they want to know the outcome before they even leave on the scavenger hunt. And they're not going to leave on that scavenger hunt unless they already know what the outcome's going to be when they get there. And that doesn't work with working with spirit. You have to be able to take a leap of faith without concerning yourself with where it's actually leading down the path, of just going, this feels good. That sparked my passion. That's spirit's way of telling me through my emotions that I'm on the right track.
Very true. Because it has to spark that joy inside of you, whether you're making a decision to leave a job or a relationship or anything.
Anything, go on a trip, you know, you're not going to be a world traveler if that's something that doesn't excite you. But I want to know how many world travelers are out there that haven't left their home yet because of fear.
Or potential writers out there.
That could include me. I know I've got some books in there and I've had a hard time taking that first step. There's some self doubt, and I'm actually dyslexic. So, some actual physical barriers that I know, especially with all the technology these days, could be overcome.
But writing is a whole different species on its own because you really have to be inspired to write. You can't just sit down and start writing. It doesn't work that way.
And it's a perfect example, writing would be a good analogy for a spiritual path. You have to kind of be inspired to decide to take that path. If your life is all happy and roses and rainbows all the time, you're probably not going to be too concerned with taking a spiritual path. I'm sure that there are people that are called and they have the perfect life environment, but most of us that are called have come through trauma or illness or some kind of something to make us go, is there more? Is there more to this than what we're being presented currently? And that's okay. That's where my inspiration and my passion comes in, because we are absolutely being prompted to go beyond the conditioning that we are only physical and living in a physical world. We are multidimensional, and we're fixing to open up all those gateways.
Yeah, I told you lately I've been having like very vivid dreams. And I feel, and you were explaining to me how spirit will teach us through one way or the other. So it could be through
Whatever
sleep.
door we leave open to that they can get in that in between space where we're not being analytical and talking ourselves out of spirit, they're going to enter any way they can. And a lot of times it's when we're sleeping, because it's when we're not going to argue with them.
And so one of my dreams was I was driving in this area where there's like nothingness, like in the middle of nowhere. And I'm driving and there's like black clouds up ahead. And I'm driving and then it's like I went through this tunnel. It's like dark black hole. And then I come out on the other end in a different place and it's like I've been like underwater and and then I took my first breath and then I was in a new place. So is that like
It sounds like portal jumping to me.
really?
Mm-hmm. It really does.
Uh,
And it seems to me like they even played it out very literal. So that way they are helping us to be able to stretch our analytical brain to accept this new information that's coming. So
mm,
to me, it's like they were sticking a balloon in there, blowing air into it to stretch it out so you could wrap your brain around this new information that's coming in. We're
mm,
fixing to change the whole paradigm. And a lot of people are in the choice making, they're deciding if they're going to join us in this new leap to a new dimensional space, or if they're going to stay here with the old programming and keep arguing in dichotomy with others for the rest of their lives. But we have to be able to overcome our own dichotomy to start taking these first steps. And when we do, Spirit starts showing us a whole new way to navigate life than the usual, okay, you go to high school, you go to college, you get married, you get your career, and it's just really kind of played out for you. And if you delineate from that at all, that everybody, um, it's time to break out of these, this is how it happens, because that's really what has kept us only in this physical dimension and not being able to live in the multidimensional realities.
And so I had another dream last night
Okay.
where uh you remember I told you I hear things, I sense, energy, so I don't want to see an actual spirit. So last night I actually saw one, and it was like I was in this mansion with different rooms, and then somehow um I had something in my teeth, so I had to go up to the room and look and get it out. And then so as I was turning to the mirror, there was somebody behind me, and it freaked me out. So I turned around, and then it was gone. And then I remember you saying that, okay, if you don't want to see spirits, certain spirits, then you can tell them that you don't want to see that. And so I did. I said, why are you showing me this when I said I don't want to see? And so in the dream, this person had already passed. But when I woke up in reality, I realized, oh, she hasn't passed. So
Oh,
that
that's
was,
interesting as well.
yeah.
But also, okay, one reason I came to the spiritual path was because I'm bilocational, and there wasn't anyone on the planet that could explain to me what was going on. I had several experiences where my physicality actually experienced it like I was going through some kind of sleep paralysis. But I have learned since then that I was actually in Teal Holland with all of you guys. And it was before I had met any of you. It was a year or 2 years before I met all of you that you guys had gone to Teal Holland. I was in a sleep paralysis almost that whole 2 weeks. So I was bilocational. I was there in spirit, just not in my physical body. And this stuff would happen, and I would think that I needed to be institutionalized and that I had lost my mind. But it was real. I mean, I've had so many validations to know that that's exactly what happened. And now I've actually walked through several portals and have been in multiple different locations at one time, and knew about it in the waking.
So what is happening in these other portals? Are they kind of parallel to our current life? Are they expanding?
There are some of this I don't know, but the answer will come to me as you ask it. Yes, they're expanding. And the more that we agree to enter them, it's like the growth can become exponential from there as we start slowly but surely. One of the reasons I'm so excited about going to Peru is because I've had a lot of flashes of being at Machu Picchu. So I know my spirit is prompting me to go there because I have multi-dimensional understandings, and a lot of times when I step on a ley line, it'll activate it, or it activates something else within me. We are, and I'm not the only one, we are putting the multidimensional grid back on this planet. It is activating us, we are activating it. That's just it. We are a part of nature. We are symbiotic with nature. So as we start working with her, that's when the synchronicities start happening, so we can continue to help and to assist and to do this. That's why a lot of spiritual leaders and teachers warn against about anything going against nature. I saw a video about some of it today. And it's just such a good point that, we need to learn how to become more a part of nature rather than how to be better than, or, some of these things where they're combining animal DNA with human DNA. That's where they messed up in Atlantis. And they're starting to do that. We're getting to that same evolutionary point again, but they don't have necessarily the best interests involved. Now, I understand them wanting to prolong the human body experience, but how can we do that and still be in line with nature rather than going against her or trying to play something that we have not reached the level to be able to do? And the more that we agree to work with nature, the more those synchronicities line up for us to do it more. Especially if spirit goes, okay, we got someone who's agreed to listen. But if all you ever do is argue with the first prompting you get, you're not going to get this. I see most people are stuck in the first prompting. They can't get to the second one because they can't get over the fear to do the first thing.
Yeah, it's really hard because we're so conditioned.
It's really the first few times I did it, I did it crying. I'm not saying I do all this stuff and I'm so bold and look at me, I'm so courageous. No, I have cried, I have thrown fits, I have been scared to death, but I did it anyway.
Well, it's like you said before that, when you take that leap, there's actually a net there to catch you, so don't be afraid to jump.
And when you're working with spirit, there has to be some type of surrender to your own higher being's knowledge. And it's so easy for us to put it outside of ourselves. And one reason I'm trying to frame it as this is our own being speaking to us. They just have it's a different perspective of us than just our physicality. And they can see, that aspect of ourselves can see beyond our limitations and especially our conditioning. And from what I've seen, the promptings that I've had are twofold. It's to get me on the right step so that way I get to the next step. So I get to the next step. It's absolutely that. But it is just as much as a challenge to overcome the guilt, the fear, the shame that has been conditioned in me that I'm not good enough to do any of those things. It's been a both, and they happen together.
So going back to the whole portal thing, I'm still kind of fascinated, but at the same time, I don't know enough about it yet to really ask the right question. So, what is happening in these different portals? Are we kind of gaining knowledge in order to bring it back to the physical realm?
To the
Like
non-physical
from
realm.
different. Say that again.
I got it real clear, to the non-physical realm.
To the non-physical. We're bringing it to the non-physical realm.
It exists in the non-physical realm in union with the physical realm. We're not going to actually make it come here. We use that non-physical realm to be able to navigate our physical realm differently. But it doesn't mean that that portal becomes non-multidimensional. It stays multidimensional. And that's just it. I mean, no matter what I know, it's only the tip of the iceberg. And I know that. It took me years and years and years of prompting of spirit to start putting two to two together to realize, I had a message in Chateau Lorraine, France about Knights Templar coming into the US through New Mexico through these portals. And then I end up finding, I had been going to one of them. It's my own personal favorite sacred site. Not personal, it is for a lot of people, sorry. But I have had a personal experience there, many of them. And, Sedona is known for portals or for vortex energy. But the thing is, it's just that's the only one that wasn't shut down. So people found it, but everyone just thinks that's the only one. Well, what good is that one if it's not connected to another one on the other side of the planet? Or Neptune or the Pleiades? Or why does it even have to only be on this planet? If we're talking multidimensional, then we get to overcome all of the limitations. So it's a combination of multidimensionality with our physicality.
So the purpose of being multidimensional is to help us understand the vastness of everything?
Absolutely that, and that we are actually limitless. We are more than what we know ourselves to be. And I'm sitting here with a disability and accessibility issues, so I'm not saying that there isn't physicality in this. What I'm saying is that the multidimensionality, when we bring it into alignment with our physicality, we can overcome physical limitations. The chemical sensitivities, and I feel this calling to Machu Picchu. Well, I got put together, an old friend of ours is date is his girlfriend is another teacher that I'm involved with, and she happens to have problems with incense and other things. So these retreats that she's making are already pretty well fragrance free, and it's easy for me to jump in. And it's real funny that if we follow that the what we think is a limitation and can keep us from doing something, spirit can actually synchronize and figure all that out for us and part the waters, and we can walk through that limitation. For myself, becoming a world traveler at the time that I did, you know, my dad, the very first trip, Cindy, you can't afford to pay for your groceries. How are you going to travel international? And I said this line before because it's just so perfect. But by the third trip, he was like, "Oh, I'm on my way to watch your kid. I can't wait to see how this one happens." He got into it himself because, at first it was his analytical mind too. How in the world? There's no way you can work this out. But by the time I'd done it 3 times, he was on board. He was like, "Oh, oh, I can't wait. Let's see how." Because every time it would be completely different things that would come together. But because I made the choice to follow my prompting, the synchronicities happened to allow me to do it. It wasn't, I didn't go, okay, I'm only going to do it if I get this bill paid, this bill paid, this bill paid, and I have this much money in the account. If I had put those specifications onto Spirit, I probably would have never gone anywhere. But it's weird because at the same time, we can negotiate. Used to, Mike was extremely mean when we were traveling. And I actually told Spirit, I don't want to ever travel. And I remember saying this, if Mike is going to keep me from my mission, I don't want to travel with him anymore. And we did like 10 years where we would go, or more than that, actually. And one time okay, I'm going to try to overcome it. And I booked our tickets together. Something happened and I had to change mine and I ended up on another flight. So we would still end up at the same place, but we wouldn't travel together because he would be mean. And I didn't understand back then. I would want to jump out the plane. And I didn't even understand that, my fight or flight was being activated. I was being traumatized. And we have new ground rules now and we have new boundaries. So we're going to try it again and we're going to try to travel with each other. But where on one hand we can like state something to Spirit, and whenever the synchronicities happen, it's going to wrap around that and to our wishes and our passions. It's amazing, in fact, sometimes how it does it. But at the same time, when we're negotiating, I don't tell Spirit whenever I'm told, you know when I have the feeling that I need to go somewhere, or I feel a location calling, I say yes first, not my laundry list of everything I want them to do for me before I'll do it. And dealing with Spirit is different than negotiating a job. It's much more of a symbiotic union, and you don't have that with your employer.
But, like you were describing your travels and then your dad was kind of on board afterwards. I mean, that's very fortunate that he kind of came around and understood, but not everyone has that chance. But I guess it's all about trust and having faith that everything will work out when you make your decision.
My mom doesn't talk to me anymore because she couldn't stand it and she couldn't get over it. It was part of it, that it was too much for her to wrap her head around. I, I think it's actually because my dad really loved the show Ancient Aliens, but it helped to put that balloon and expand his mind, kind of what they did to you in your dream.
If only we can expand everyone's minds like that.
I, you know, The first message I ever got on the spiritual path was, in the future, you will lead by example. And at the time, I was caught up in some pretty yucky, nasty stuff. And I looked around me and said, I don't want to lead anybody into this. And I got busy. And that was when I actually got serious, busy to follow spirit rather than what, just this snowball of trauma that kept going on in my life. That's what gave me the strength to stop it, because I didn't want to pull anybody into that kind of a life. I wanted, if I had to be an example, then I better get busy building a better life for myself. But the way that we expand people's mind is by doing it even though they tell us not to.
True enough, and hopefully they can see, oh yeah, she's doing it that way and it seems to work just fine.
I've had so many people jealous and envious of trips that I've gone on and not realizing that they have every capacity to do it too. Because if I based it on my bank account, I would have never gone anywhere ever. When you're dealing with relationships, work relationships, personal relationships, your relationship with yourself, definitely negotiate so that, never override your own integrity or your own values for anybody for any reason. Because if you are, you're probably in relationship with someone who doesn't have your best interest at heart. So by putting that forefront, it makes sure that who we're working with has our best interest at heart. The thing is with spirit, our own higher self, there is not another entity in the universe that's going to have more best interest for ourselves than that. So as long as you are actually working with your highest self and not your demon fear mind, then it is going to be prompting you with the best choices that you could ever make for yourself.
Yeah, that's very true, because I don't think spirit would lead you on a path that's not beneficial for you.
And that's why it's so important to sit down in meditation and to make the effort and the intention to know yourself better. Because the more that you work on your relationship with yourself, you're not going to question when that prompting comes in. You're going to know, this has my best interest at heart. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to do anything. I can just follow that clue. But if
Right.
you don't have a relationship with your highest self and with that highest aspect, and realizing it has a lot more perspective than what you with your horse blinders have, and can see beyond your own limiting situation of how to be able to navigate through it, out of it, and beyond it. If you don't have that relationship, then there's not the trust, and you're probably not going to follow the promptings. And then it's very hard to get on that path of that organized, synchronistic intelligence that comes to lift you up and help you change your life.
Ah, but it's so hard. It's so hard to do. It's
It's
easy to
so
say.
difficult. And that's the reason I think we've done some stuff on this before, but it's such an important topic. Let's keep doing it until we get all the different angles and the different way that spirit can explain it to us, because that's the hardest part, is that first step,
Hmm.
and trusting our souls, and that the promptings that we're receiving, first off, our promptings, almost, oh, I get it everywhere I go. Someone hears that I am psychic medium and they grab my arm and go, am I crazy? Anybody that has some natural latent ability like I have, which everybody has, but maybe not everybody has recognized it, but the people who are starting to awakening to their own abilities and gifts, they want to know, are they crazy? Because we've been so conditioned that spiritual intuition is evil, is demons, is, can you trust that? You can't trust that. You got to have somebody else tell you what to do. And that has been so ingrained in us that when the spirit does start to lead, the first thing people go through is they think they're crazy and delusional, myself included. I sing Delta Dawn because it's a song about a delusional woman. I still sing that to this day, because one of the very first promptings that spirit started guiding and teaching me with was to pack a bag. And it was we were in Ruidoso, New Mexico, and I had this prompting to pack a bag, and I had actually gone and bought my first suit that day, but I was exhausted from going and trying it on, and so when I got that prompting, I didn't do it. I woke up the next morning with a call from someone that was telling us Lumendang was going to be in St. Louis that day, but we had to fly in immediately if we were going to make this special meeting. And I had 45 minutes from the time we got that phone call to book 4 tickets, one for me and Mike and 2 for a set of friends, and get my bag packed and get out the door because the airport was 4 hours away. That was my first one to not do it. And I was the one that suffered because I didn't do what Spirit prompted. And the last trip I took 9 years ago, was getting messages 3 months before I left that I needed to pack this bag. And it was down to the nth little thing. And I felt prompted, and there was nothing on the outside to say that and so I was singing Delta Dawn thinking I was crazy, packing this bag for 3 months. But then whenever I got to go, my friend was able to get me to Hong Kong on her miles, but then we had to get a ticket from Hong Kong to Bangkok. So I wasn't able to check my bag, and this carry-on that I had been prompted for 3 months to pack was perfect. So even though I still thought I was crazy 20 years later, 15 years later after the first time, I still thought I was crazy, but I did it. And not only that, I mean, we ended up in a situation where my friend she was going to be on NBC, be interviewed, and she didn't think there was any way that I could, go with her. Well, the guy came while she was in the shower, and because I was dressed perfectly, because they had told me exactly what to put in my bag, he thought I was her manager and just immediately treated me like I was her manager, and I got to go on the whole thing. So even though I still argued, it was still hard. Many years later, I actually did it because I was like, well, who cares if I am crazy? No one's going to even know I packed a bag in my own basement.
Okay, but what if someone gets a message like that to prepare, say 3 months ahead of time and nothing happens? So, a month goes by, 2 months goes by, and you're like, your expectation or your hope kind of starts to dwindle, right? Then
And
what?
that's a good point. And the thing is, I built up a relationship with Spirit that I can pretty well trust my promptings. But one time I had all this stuff, and I had to go to Himalayas, and I needed the boots, and I needed the backpack, and I needed the wool undergarment. And I started getting everything, and I got everything, and it didn't happen. And I thought I was, you know what? It was a couple months later, we were in Melbourne for a course, and the ex-teacher that I used to follow goes, oh, I was going to take everyone to the Himalayas, but then when we got to the part that we had to all have the same passport in order to, the same country passport in order to travel together, or else the Chinese wouldn't let us in. Come to find out, it was all being planned, but it got nixed. Sometimes you just got to trust that, well, what did you lose going ahead and doing it anyway? And I was, a little bit, because I had invested a little bit of money in this stuff. Every single thing I bought for that trip, we are still using in our camp or in our travel, or it's all come in handy. Not one thing did I buy end up going to waste. In fact, some of it I'm going to take to Peru. That's another thing I've noticed, that even if plans change or whatever, you're not going to be shorted or out. It's all going to work around and come out. Just like if you're too scared and you don't follow the first synchronistic hit, it's going to circle back around for you and give you another choice and another chance. Now, if you never open up that resistance to let any of it in, yeah, you're going to if you're stuck in a hole, more than likely you were prompted more than once and you argued more than once, and your spirit just gave up because it couldn't get through to you.
Well, that's too bad.
I know people, and you can see that's probably what happened. And it is sad. And that's one reason I'm doing this podcast, is so people can feel more confident in following their seemingly delusional promptings. I want to encourage you to follow all the, well, okay,
No,
hopefully you
not
have
all.
some discernment. Using discernment.
Yes.
And you do have to have discernment. And, but I know that whenever I've gotten those promptings, it's come through with that feeling of passion and knowing that that is the path for me. If it excites you, quit arguing. Do it. If you do not make some effort with action every day toward your passion, you have no chance of fulfillment.
That's a really good point. Is if it fills your passion, that should be your first clue.
And we should all be doing everything that we can daily to act. And it can be small things. It doesn't have to be huge, monumentous things. But hey, this feels right. This feels good. So and you do it and you do all you can towards that. And that's going to get you further and further into that fulfillment. I see so many energy vampires out in the world because they won't follow their own their own higher beings' promptings. So they're going to suck off of everyone else's and the jealousy and the envy and if you want to make a big life for yourself, if you want to go beyond your limitations, then team up with your highest self that is multidimensional and has complete 380 views of what's going on and can also completely understand the circumstances and the situation that you're in and show you how to navigate through that.
That is a very, very good point. But
And
doing it is hard, like
well,
I said.
and there are modalities, institutions that have set out to tell you that following your own intuition is evil. And but you need to be fearful. What if you're following a demon? Low frequency feels like low frequency. If you have a fear-based thought, you're probably following your own demons. But if you have something that stokes your fires, don't be afraid of that.
That's a really good point to emphasize, is that if it's fear-based and it's making you reconsider and, yeah, cower and be afraid of the world, then that is not the voice you wanna follow.
That is not the voice you want to follow. The voice I follow, I know has my best interest at heart. We have played this relationship inside out. I have really sat down and did the best I can to get to know my own spirit and what those promptings from it feel, sound, hear, all those, what it is. So that, because more than anything else, I want to move on those promptings, on my next move on this chess table.
Well, and I think not just, following spirit, but just in everyday life, like the people you interact with, the people you listen to on social media, the ones who amplify hate and fear and all that, you do not want to follow that voice.
I have a friend who is so political right now, and he is, and I understand that there's some fascism going on and that people want to stop it. I'm not in disagreement with that per se. I say that this has been happening for a long time because the system is set up to do exactly that. And there's no way I can even explain that to him because there's no opening in his brain to hear it. And he's very enlightened, very kind, good person. But because he has watched so much of the programming, you can't get through it all. Reality is different for every single one of us, and it's okay to accept that. We cannot force my reality to be your reality. And so often, the forces of the planet, the society around us, they're all trying to force their perspective into each and every one of us. That's the antithesis to following spirit. And I think it's the biggest hurdle that we have to do it. But just those little bitty things. I didn't want to move to a subdivision outside of Albuquerque when I came back to New Mexico from St. Louis. But where I really wanted to go, I could not find any rentals or any place that we could move to. And situation kind of forced us into this suburban that I didn't want to go to. But not long after I do that, I start having promptings, and all I keep seeing is my car come in and out of this little town, Madrid. And I didn't even know that the goal was actually to live here, but it absolutely was. But I didn't even believe I could ever live here back then, because it was beyond my scope of limitations. I didn't realize that, I didn't even know at the time that I came and got a job is what I did, because that was my next thought. It's like, my car's coming in and out. I must have a job over there. So I came in and I did get a job as psychic on someone's porch. But that's what, I was in the right place for when the first rental in this area opened up, and I was able to step into it. That was the only way to get into this town, but I didn't know how to. It was through spirit prompting that I was able to navigate and get here, because it's a real small town. There's only like 150, 200 houses, and they don't let you build anymore. It's kind of a historical type place, and it's just extremely difficult to get into.
And the impossible becomes possible.
With spirit, it actually does.
Yeah.
And synchronicity works beyond our calculating mind.
Well, it has to, otherwise it wouldn't blow our minds.
That's kind of the whole point of it. But not if we don't ever take the first step. And if you're stuck, ask your spirit, did I resist the first step? Because if you ask it, it's going to give you the chance again. Synchronicity will circle back around for you. And I know this. And I also know that the multidimensional selves understand what we're trying to navigate through, and they will help us with that. I think most of the people that are coming into awareness and awakening right now, the first steps Spirit teaches us is how to go beyond our own guilt and fear that has been conditioned into us to take the first step.
Yeah, but you got to take that time for yourself to be able to connect. Otherwise, the world right now is just so crazy, so much noise. We just allow the noise to come in, so we got to stop that and
We've got
reconnect.
to create space for our spirit to be in our psyche. And, I have a Facebook group. I call it the space in between, because I know that almost all my promptings and intuitive message come in as I'm going to sleep, or as I'm waking up, or right when I step in the shower, or when I sit in the car to go drive. And those moments where you drop all the chaos and junk, that's when the promptings come in. So that's why I do recommend meditation. I do recommend finding a silent space for yourself to be in, to overcome our hatred of self that drives us to all that distraction, to constantly being on the phone with friends or on social media, whatever you want, anything, so I don't have to hear myself hate myself. We have to come back into love with ourselves in order to be able to sit in silence with ourselves. And that's a process. And that I could do, let's just do 10 podcasts on that, because it's so important.
And you can
And I
start
say
with a
this,
walk in nature, right?
it's a perfect thing to do. But I know before I had worked through a lot of my shadow and my trauma, there's no way I wanted to be alone with myself. I was cruel to my own being. So, what is your inner dialogue like? What is your inner, because more than likely your relationship with your own inner self is your relationship with your higher self. So if you want to work on any relationship in your life, that's the one you want to work on. And if you are constantly hating yourself, then you're probably trying to suck love off of everybody else in your immediate surroundings, and it doesn't generally make for a satisfying, fulfilling life. Well, I think we hit one of the most important topics today. I started getting it yesterday that this is what we needed to do it on. So,
Oh, yeah? Oh.
yeah, I'm trying to follow my spirit's prompting even for this. Not trying, I am, but making the effort and the intention to do so. Well, it's intention, and then the promptings come, and then the action. That's manifestation.
That's how I've been doing it.
See, you're good.
And when I hear a lot of noise in the background, I just try not to listen to it because there's only one voice you want to hear is yours, your spirit.
It's the only one that truly has someone outside of you. They can love you and they can want your best interest, but there's the love I'm talking about is way bigger than what any human could actually even have for another human. The spiritual, like Hinduism, Ram, 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 Christianity, Jesus, love, sitting in love. It's a frequency that we need to seek. And what I believed I was unworthy of that. That's part of what sent me on the path. And that when I did finally touch base with my spirit, the amount of love that it had for me blew my mind. And I realized that all of those things that others had told me had made me unlivable and was going to make me go to hell because I was horrible for had no problem. There was nope, the love was all there. I had never had any kind of action that could have stopped that love. I was a groomed and trained teenager that I was called promiscuous, but I wasn't promiscuous. I was groomed. And I believed in my mind because a Baptist preacher told me I was going to go to hell. I believed I was going to go to hell. And when I came face to face with my spirit, that was not true. The love was fully there. There was nothing I had ever done that could diminish that frequency. That's who I'm talking about connecting with.
I think that's a beautiful place to stop.
I think that one just nailed it. Bing. We're getting to 108 on time, so it's perfect.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us today for our podcast.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us. We've enjoyed having this insightful discussion and hope that you found it insightful too.
And if you'd like to book a reading with me or have some spiritual teaching, anything like that, you can get a hold of me at syndicate.com. And I'm also on all of the social medias, or just make a comment under wherever this is posted and I'll see it. And also with questions or things you would like to throw into the conversation. We would like it to be interactive as possible. So please click, like, share, all of that kind of good stuff.
Yes. All right. See you next time. Ciao.
Ciao.